Hi friends, welcome to another Reddit Rev episode. Please subscribe and hit that like button if you're enjoying the content, and please share it with your friends if you can. I'd really appreciate it. Also, please leave me a comment to let me know what you think of the episode. Now let's get started with today's stories.
My story, the aftermath, and a year update. Tuesday, October 27th, 2020. I'm writing this from my phone, so bear with me if it's formatted wrong. So last night, my wife of 7 years decided to have a relaxing night. After dinner, she went to her den to watch TV while I shifted between watching the Spurs soccer game and doing miscellaneous things I needed to do. Next thing I know, she got the wine out and drank 2 bottles. Around midnight, I went to check on her and saw she was passed out on the couch. I went to scoop her up with her smartwatch, and a message popped up on the screen. It said something along the lines of, "I can't do that. Your husband would beat the shit out of me." I was perplexed by what this could be, so I clicked on it and realized it was an exchange between my wife and a longtime acquaintance of mine. While I wasn't exactly a close friend, we had played soccer together for years and drank with each other before turning 21. We had known him since our teenage days, to a point where we nicknamed him Jacket Holder, because no matter how wild things got in high school brawls, he'd always stay back holding everyone's jackets, including mine, while they thought. To continue my point, I scrolled to the top of the conversation while the device was still attached to her wrist, and from what I could tell, he was the one that first contacted her, unless she deleted her initial contact message. Last night, I was shocked to witness a flurry of flirting and subtle innuendos that could only be defined as an act of infidelity. As she became increasingly tipsy, her words made it blatantly clear that she had always desired him, claiming if they were together, no one would find out, and you know the most heartbreaking part? She said she was great at keeping secrets. It's something I'll never forget. I desperately scoured her watch for more messages. Yet unfortunately, I didn't have the passcode to access her phone. After a sleepless night in shock, when it came time to go to work at 5:30 a.m., instead of going out and facing reality, I found myself grabbing an unfinished bottle of vodka and filling it with Coke before heading off on a long walk down the defunct railway line near our house. The surrounding woods provided miles upon miles of solace for my troubles. Right now, I'm seething with frustration beneath a railway bridge like an irate troll. You'd likely be able to spot me from miles away thanks to the heated steam billowing out of my ears. So what do? Even the thought of looking her in the eye after reading those words had me feeling like my heart was ripped to shreds. All love that I had for her just dissipated and vanished into thin air with no hope of returning. If it were possible, ghosting her would be ideal. Never having to converse with her ever again. That statement, "I'm great at keeping secrets," made things even worse. Who is she trying to fool? It stinks, but now I need to decide how deep down this rabbit hole I'm willing to go. My heart is heavy and full of pain. I'm done with the lies and deception. I've put so much into her, just as a partner, but also personally, with love, admiration, and respect that was reciprocated, or at least seemed to be. It's hard to accept what she has now revealed herself to truly be, an untrustworthy snake. That knowledge made me feel like my own morals have been strained and dragged down with hers. This morning I woke up feeling worse than yesterday in more ways than one. It is almost inconceivable to think that someone you idolized and received guidance and life lessons from could also be a pedophile, rapist, or otherwise immoral person. The realization of such would undoubtedly cause feelings of betrayal and disillusionment, since your past experience of them have shaped who you are as an individual. That being said, my apologies for the nonsensical ramblings. I am privileged to live in a home that is owned by my parents, who chose to relocate to a retirement village 6 years ago so that they could have peace and tranquility during their last days. The house will be passed down to me when they pass away, which hopefully won't occur for many years. As opposed to dealing with the constant upkeep and issues associated with home ownership, my parents wanted simplicity. Thus, upon divorce, it's not something that would fall into my soon-to-be ex hands either. So what should I do? To be frank, I'm strongly considering not saying a word and just evicting her. Additionally, while on my way here, The idea of having my locksmith friend discreetly change the locks today came to mind. I can make up some random excuse about something being wrong with the door. She wouldn't take notice regardless as long as I'm there. After he is finished, I'll lock the front door and then invite her to come out back. When she steps outside, I'll sneak in quickly and secure it once again from the inside. This might seem too childish for a situation, but honestly, at this point, my options are limited. Currently observing an empty bottle with a broken perspective of life ahead of me, what can possibly be done? Without hesitation, I know that my so-called friend was up to no good. Had it not been for luck and a little snooping around, I would never have found out about his scheme. It's time we settled this once and for all. He'll be holding his face after our confrontation instead of my jacket. TLDR, caught wife trying to openly cheat on me with someone I considered a friend from her iWatch. Wednesday, October 28th. After my first post, I was overwhelmed with gratitude for all the people who reached out to me. But when 2 dog walkers arrived at my house and noticed that something wasn't right, they asked what had happened. When I told them everything, one of them simply said, "Son, don't make things worse by drinking now. It will only cause chaos." Those words kept ringing in my head as I was on the verge of making some really bad choices. So thank them for keeping me from going down a dark path. I quickly disposed of the vodka and then reached out to a friend. He said I could stay with him until my emotions subsided. He was at work but had left me instructions on how to get his spare key. Living in a small town of 1,500 people meant that he wasn't too far away, so it took only minutes before I found myself sitting in his living room trying desperately to regain my composure. My wife was both texting and calling me nonstop in the morning since my work van remained parked in our driveway, yet I had vanished. When she asked me what happened to me, I texted her that there was some engine issues, so someone kindly provided me a lift to work, which seemed to satisfy her as all she did after receiving my response was send back an "okay." When my friend returned around 5 p.m., I revealed to him all that had happened and solicited his opinion. To ensure the news of jacket holder would not reach my wife yet, I begged him to maintain secrecy until I was able to address it with her in due time. That being said, going after jacket holder violently right now was not beneficial to me whatsoever. While some people might be arguing that he had done nothing wrong, his messaging my wife first was undeniably flirty. Why exactly did he think it necessary to message my wife, a person whom he only knows about in passing? While I have no objections if 2 adults decide to converse with each other as long as their intentions are clear from the start. However, in this situation, not only were they strangers, but also it seemed like it started off being flirtatious when they saw each other out and about. My friend suggested that I take a more covert approach and see what new information I could uncover, while simultaneously speaking to an attorney about obtaining legal advice. He dropped me off at around 6 p.m., at which point the effect of having experienced high levels of adrenaline throughout the day had taken its toll on my energy, leaving me exhausted by the time I returned home. As soon as I arrived home, my wife bombarded me with questions about work. When I asked why she was so interested all of a sudden, she told me that since leaving my large flask and lunch bag in the front seat of a van earlier today, something felt off. I was about to come up with a lie, but why bother? Exhaustion consumed me, and instead I just admitted to what happened the night prior. When putting her drunken self to bed, an alert on her iWatch caught my eye. So did all the other notifications that revealed she was actually a cheating scoundrel who wasn't as trustworthy or loyal as she pretended to be. Her demeanor quickly changed from a cross-armed powerful figure into one of fear in less than 1 second. Turns out secrets aren't so easy to keep after all. Begging that little rodent for sex didn't do any good either. Yes, it's true. I read it all, and now I know too much. She began to weep, and I decamped upstairs for a shower. Afterward, when I returned, there she was still sitting on the top of the stairs crying with an array of excuses already prepared. Intoxication, vulnerability, never engaging in such behavior before her, claiming he had been the one to initiate contact first and that it meant nothing, pledging she would never have actually carried out what happened. She precisely echoed everything that others on here have said, as if she had a script. The one thing she didn't do was attempt to blame me. She likely knew I would instantly kick her out of a door should she have tried it. I informed her that our marriage had come to an end and that she would need to vacate the premises within a month. She was relocated then to a spare room, whereupon I began neglecting her with cold glances and subtle head shakes. Whenever she started prattling on, as if my words were obvious, there was nothing left for us but silence. She slept in the guest room last night, and I haven't conversed with her all day. If fortune smiles on me, perhaps she'll be gone by the time I return home from work. Nevertheless, my luck is usually not that favorable. When discussing the situation with my folks, my mom was definite about one thing. Absolutely no way would I cast her out onto the streets. My mother has a close relationship with her since it will be 11 years come December since we started dating. My mother had the audacity to admit her mistake, yet excuse it as if just being words, taking her side over mine. I thought this was a difficult situation that we could handle maturely as adults. How wrong I was. Could she possibly get away with this? Am I powerless if my mother is against me from leaving my own house? It looks like things are headed towards an all-out war between us. Part 2 of a War of the Roses. Even though I haven't done anything wrong and will be inheriting the house one day when they pass, there is no way that I'm moving out. I'm meeting with a divorce lawyer next week to determine the best course of action for me. Until then, though it is difficult, I'll choose to disregard my soon-to-be ex-wife's words and actions. Her deceitfulness leaves me wondering if she was lying or genuinely trying to gain an ally in this affair. Regardless, all that matters now are the steps necessary towards moving forward with my life. My sincerest apologies for the tardiness of this update. I'm only now able to write it as I wrap up my work. Now, back to the funhouse. Monday, November 16th. Greetings everyone. I'm sure many of you have been wondering how things are going, so I wanted to provide an update on what's new. It has been an unbearable 20 days since I discovered my wife attempting to be unfaithful with a friend of mine. Although I had asked her to vacate the house within a month, she seems content lying in the spare room after having influenced my mother's opinion on our situation. No matter the circumstances, I'm determined to take ownership. I have consulted with my divorce lawyers numerous times and am presently drafting a petition for divorce accompanied by serving her the papers. Furthermore, in addition to opening my own bank account, I've also withdrawn half of our joint savings. Now that all is settled on my end, it's time to move forward with this process as soon as possible. The ambience in the house has been uncomfortable to say the least. Everyone avoids being together in the living room. We both typically stay secluded within our own rooms, and I have taken extra steps of working late more often so that I would not need to communicate with her as much. But recently, after researching about a 180-degree method, I made conscious efforts to be courteous while still maintaining a cold demeanor towards her. I'm so happy that I finally took the step, as it felt like a beastly thing to try to refuse her very existence. It wasn't the right way to behave, and instead I ended up blaming myself for what happened, rather than placing blame on her. Last week, I strayed from our agreement when my daughter was sitting on the floor of the bathroom sobbing. Even though there was more of a there hug rather than one full of love and warmth, I instinctively embraced her to comfort her in that moment. Unfortunately, these days I'm so unsure about who she is and what she's capable of doing with me that my mind believes even though this could be an act set up by her. However, as toxic as all these thoughts can be at times, it probably isn't true, but such thoughts are extremely hard to avoid while living under severe tension like this one. She's been crowing about how she'll do anything in her power to make amends for the marriage, so I suggested a lie detector test as a way of gauging her response. While I don't have any intention of taking it myself, nor do I know where to begin if it ever was needed, this seemed like an effective measure judging her reaction. Initially, she was excited to take the test, but when panic set in, her anxiety disorder began to spin out of control. She showed up with a tablet full of false readings and inaccurate results due to her anxiousness. I couldn't help but laugh, a slightly maniacal chuckle that ended in a childish giggle. Clearly, this woman will do anything for her marriage except take an honest lie detector test. How curious. In my initial post, I meant precisely what I had said. When I read her hurtful words, all the love and affection that once existed between us simply evaporated. She no longer was the person with whom I could share anything, or even trusting her with my life. Instead, she had become a dreaded heap of trash that needed to be disposed of before it wreaked havoc throughout my life. Since I introduced jacket holder's infidelity to our friend group a few weeks ago, his reputation has plummeted. Not one of us wants anything to do with him anymore, and he's been completely exiled from the group. After a couple of unsuccessful attempts at contacting me by phone, I finally blocked his number, unsurprisingly. It was foolish for Jacket Holder to think that this would be worth it. I hopes he realized what an awful decision this was. I've spoken to my mom numerous times about this, and during a heated discussion, questioned her why she seemed to be siding with my wife. Was there something that she wasn't telling me? What did she anticipate us doing? Living as roommates or just disregarding the entire situation? It's absurd. She stated that since we first got together, she viewed my wife as her long-awaited daughter, due to her having a stillborn daughter before giving birth to me, an event which has been tormenting her ever since. As I mentioned before, my wife and mother are close. Since she doesn't have any family or many friends who also have their own lives and households, it would be devastating for her to go through this alone if we separate during the pandemic, something that my mom won't allow. She attempted to negotiate with me, suggesting that I consider couples counseling and then reassess our relationship in 3 or 4 months. However, I adamantly declined such a suggestion, as the thought of remaining under the same roof as my wife over Christmas made me feel disgusted. My father had never been one for communication. He is usually timid and holds his tongue while respecting my mother's instructions within our household. As people on this forum have mentioned, my request may have been as selfish and spoiled since it isn't my house. My response is that it is critical that I uphold some form of self-respect while also ensuring someone keeps their word, no matter how difficult the circumstance might seem. If I choose to leave, my friend has graciously offered me residence for a few weeks until I can get situated, but if that's the path taken, it will signify an end between my parents and myself. There won't be any attempts at reconciling. I'm done with them. On their side of things, this could appear like me giving up without making a concerted effort to fix our issues first. To me, however, it looks more like they are settling on someone who not only betrayed me, but is also still living under one roof while their own son sets off alone into uncertainty. What would happen after that door closes behind me? My parents allowed us to move into the house we now call home after a year after our wedding, which many consider their late wedding present. We took it upon ourselves to make improvements over the years and invested tens of thousands in upgrades because it was our intention for my parents to move in when they got older. I constantly imagine leaving it all behind, beginning anew in a place that is unknown to me. But then reality hits. I have nowhere else to go, and this town has been my home since birth. Can't help but feel as if I'm being too hard on myself here. It's like a great tension inside of me between wanting freedom from my parents while also feeling guilty for possibly cutting ties with them completely. Why must everything rest solely upon me? Is there something wrong with the person I am when good fortune seems so far away? Maybe instead of dishing out blame on myself, it's about time that luck takes it hold and rewards those who are deserving. Wednesday, December 2nd. This morning I bid farewell to the home that has been my abode for so many years. Anticipating a few hours of freedom while my wife was attending her ophthalmologist's appointment, I saw this as an ideal opportunity to gather and relocate all my belongings. Once everything was settled in its new place, I placed the house keys along with the divorce papers on top of the kitchen table and then left without looking back. To distance myself from any further communication with my wife, I blocked both her number and that of my mother. For the time being, any contact between us will be done through our respective lawyers. As to where I'm staying now, a friend has kindly offered me residence at their place temporarily. Hopefully within 2 weeks or before Christmas Day even rolls around, I'll have found an apartment to rent out as my own by then. It has been some time since speaking to my parents last. It was via text message. However, during this conversation, I tried informing them in explicit details about the messages sent by my wife inscribed on her letter jacket. The pain I felt was unbearable, and I knew this wasn't her first time from keeping something from me. My wife's "I'm great at keeping secrets" comment did not help the situation either, to which my mother remarked that she could not speak with me if I were like this. She attempted calling a few days ago, but without success since then. So today, for my own sake, I blocked her number completely as a precautionary measure. I'm deeply disappointed in my parents, and the sense of betrayal is possibly more intense than the original hurt caused by my wife's actions. At a time like this, you would assume that your family, the wrong one, would be there to support you and offer strength. However, instead, they have weakened me further with their lack of understanding. My parents make me feel as if it's all been overblown, or at worst, it has all somehow been my fault for tearing apart the family unit, which nothing could be farther from the truth. I never demanded them to do something extraordinary. All I wanted was for my cheating spouse to be removed from the house. My dad also had the opportunity to support me by showing backbone for the first time, yet he chose not to. Ultimately, we have no choice but to accept and live with our decisions and the decisions of others. After reading the comments on my previous post, I feel that I need to clarify something. People are saying that because I ended things so easily and didn't try hard enough to save my marriage means that I didn't love my wife as much as other people. This is untrue. In actuality, my heart was absolutely shattered when I found out what she had been doing. Never did anything compare in its intensity to how dear she was and still is to me. We all hold certain boundaries that when crossed can alter our lives permanently. As I read the malicious words in the texts, something broke within me. My love for her evaporated as if a switch had been flipped. Any attempts at reconciliation afterward were simply delaying what was unavoidable: the end of our relationship. I'm curious to see how the dynamics of my parents' relationship will shift now that I am no longer around. Will they remain supportive towards her, even though it had ended their bond with me? As for me, I love to travel. My wife hates flying, so most of our holidays have been in southern England, places like Newquay and Torquay and Cornwall and Devon, so it would be great to travel abroad again. The last time I was abroad was when I was 20 for a friend's holiday birthday in Greece, which was 13 years ago. I'd love to see a bit of America, so once this pandemic calms down, I've definitely got my sights set on the States. Thanks to everyone who has spent time listening to my story. Bye bye for now. After posting on Reddit over 7 months ago, I felt sure that my decision-making process was complete, but this morning a phone call reeled me back in and threw me into uncertainty again. I have relocated 15 miles away and changed my phone number while still navigating a divorce from my wife. She has disregarded all requests for cooperation, but this lack of engagement is impeding the process. To overcome her refusal to participate, I am now submitting an application for deemed service in order to have the courts serve her officially. If she continues with such reluctance, and I'll be able to pursue a divorce without any input from her whatsoever. Well, this morning while at work, I got a phone call from my friend telling me that my dad was trying to get in touch as my mother is not well and asking if it would be okay if he gave him my number. I said yes, and my dad phoned to tell me that my mom was in the hospital. She's stable, though not great. Obviously, I was shocked as I haven't heard my dad's voice for so long. It was also the most emotional I've ever heard him. He told me that my mom really wants to see me, so would I meet him at the hospital tonight and go in to see her with him? I accepted and planned to meet him outside the hospital. At this point, my mind was a wreck. I couldn't focus on anything, but whether or not agreeing to go would drag me back to the situation I worked so hard to leave behind. Never before had such nervousness taken control of my body. It felt like going blindfolded through a blazing building with no escape route in sight. What could she possibly want to discuss with me now? Has her position changed? It's not likely, especially when considering her unchanged character. Will my ex-wife be present too? The thought of ever interacting with her again, except in the divorce proceedings, sends chills down my spine. My fury is still ablaze regarding the situation with them and their preference for my adulterous wife's side instead of mine. I've been debating if I should go or not, yet in the end I will attend. Although musing about talking to her over the phone has come up as well. However, it remains unknown whether she would agree to that or even be healthy enough for it. It seems like I'm painted as a villain here and wonder if this whole catastrophe was caused by my leaving. What do you think would be an appropriate way of handling this predicament? Saturday, May 29th. Over the last few days, I have been reflecting on what transpired and coming to terms with my emotions. My apologies for not having shared an update sooner. After much deliberation, I decided to visit the hospital on Wednesday night. Even though my nerves were getting better for me and trying to convince me not to go for fear of something would happen, I knew that if I backed out at this point in time, it would haunt me forever. As soon as I drove into the hospital car park, a feeling of paranoia engulfed me, almost as if my wife was going to appear from behind one of the bushes or something. When I arrived at the entrance, my father attempted to embrace me, but I refused. If there was any chance my wife had come with him, then I told him straight away that I would be heading out again right away. After he assured me she hadn't come along, we proceeded towards the ward where my mom was staying. As soon as I saw my mother, I was absolutely terrified. She looked like she had been in a battle. Never before had I seen her appear so feeble. Her eye was almost swollen shut with discoloration and bruising along one side of her face, indicating the impact from an unfortunate fall. 2 broken ribs, a shattered elbow, and trauma to one half of her head were all taken into account due to the chain reaction from hitting each body part on the ground consecutively. She appeared lost in thought until she noticed me and her face lit up with joy. Expressing how much I was missed, she seemed unsure if we would ever meet again, but I made sure to point out that it wouldn't have been too difficult for her to reach out had she wanted. A brief period of discussion followed as we discussed the events which led up to this moment and how my dad found her after hours in an emotionally fragile state. However, despite all the hardship, determination could be seen within those eyes, determined not just to get better, but to also mend our relationship along the way. I brought up the topic of my wife and we wanted to get a divorce, but it seemed like she hadn't been getting any of my letters. After questioning whether or not she was still living in our shared house, my mother answered with an affirmative response, which made my father visibly uncomfortable. Unable to look at them anymore out of sheer disgust, all I could do was avert my gaze away from them as my mom started talking about how lost and broken down without me that the love of my, former love of my life had become. At that moment, I accepted nothing would change. She was not having a newfound revelation or considering things differently. All my mom wanted was for everything to return to the way it once had been. She maintained the house and will always be my home, yet I declared that no longer matters to me. All it holds are painful recollections now. I was only there for a short time, warning them not to expect me to call soon. As my dad walked me out, he asked that we keep in contact. Whether it is the right thing or not remains uncertain. My feelings were all over the place when I returned home, from sadness to anger, but at least I went and faced this difficult situation head on. Memories of my wife flooded back into my mind, and though it still hurts, I am grateful for what she once meant to me. When I reflect on the events for the last 7 months, it seems almost surreal. The rapidity with which everything fell apart was breathtaking, a vivid reminder that life comes at you unexpectedly when you're not paying attention. Unfortunately, in this case, I hadn't been. It's sheer providence that I found out about her infidelity before it was too late. Nothing more than an extraordinary twist of fate. I had no idea what was going on until one moment when something about her watch gave me clarity. Now I understand the truth. My feelings for her have been replaced with anger and resentment. She had taken away some of the best years of my life. All those memories now feel tainted by someone else's narrative instead of mine. A friend suggested seeking therapy to help process these emotions before they cause a lasting change in who I am or how I approach future relationships. I believe this is the correct course of action for me as I am emotionally exhausted. The past 7 months have been incredibly difficult and trying. Nevertheless, it was better to learn the truth than remain in ignorance. While my spirit aches for how things ended up playing out, you cannot control someone's intentions or actions, but you can gain knowledge and strength from such experiences. I recall reading about how loyalty is one of the most underestimated virtues. It's likely because you can't really gauge someone's true commitment to you until it has been tested. Although not something we face daily, right now, more than ever, I recognize its necessity in life. Tuesday, July 20th. Hello everyone. It's been a while since I posted, so I wanted to give an update on my recent developments. Most significantly, the divorce is almost done, as my wife and I have both signed our respective paperwork for the lawyer. Now all that's left are some finishing touches before everything can be finalized. Through my father, she sent me a message apologizing for not allowing us to move forward. She acknowledged that past attempts at saving our relationship were unsuccessful and her mental health must take precedence. I'm grateful that she has made the wise decision to prioritize self-care. Additionally, she expressed intentions of relinquishing all claims in the divorce proceedings and will be actively seeking stable ground so as to vacate our home when possible. I accept her terms without hesitation or reservation. I haven't spoken to my mother yet, but according to my dad, she's much better now and she is back in a normal living environment post-hospitalization. It remains unclear how our relationship will evolve from here. However, I propose putting the house fully into my name for security reasons and then endeavoring to repair our broken bridges. Time will tell if his plan succeeds or not. My biggest obstacles lie in my mind and the struggle to conquer all that has happened. It's amazing, but also frightening how our brain works. As an example, I can still recall with vividness the truffles I had consumed and been thrown up when visiting my grandmother a long time ago at age 5. Since then, they have disappeared from my diet, yet if I focus on it, those same flavors stay and interact with me after 5 years. I'm adamant about not living in the past, carrying around negative thoughts and opinions from my life experiences 30 years down the road. I don't want to become one of those aged people who have had all of the good stripped away due to suffering. You know the kind. They used to be joyful or entertaining, but something transpired along their journey that forever shifted them into a person they never wanted to be. Only pain remains for them now. That's definitely not what I aspire for myself, so it's essential for me to release this angst before it envelops me entirely too much. I've begun therapy and consulted with a psychiatrist both virtually and in person. It's done wonders for me to openly express all my thoughts, however brief. My psychiatrist then said something that truly resonated. When I'm lamenting the fact my best years had passed, she uttered, "Your greatest days are still ahead of you." This proclamation has made me realize there is so much more to look forward to. What I believe she was trying to express is that the past doesn't exist except in our imagination. Conversely, what is occurring right now does matter, and we all have the prerogative of making it meaningful or dwelling on a non-existent history. This thought process will help me stay positive when things seem bleak. I'm overjoyed that my dream of traveling is finally coming true. My friend decided to join me on this journey, and we're booking a flight to the vibrant city of New York at the start of October for 7 days. I've been longing to experience autumn in New York ever since watching You've Got Mail. It's something special about seeing leaves transition colors that can't be described with mere words. It promises to be an unforgettable trip. As I embark on the journey of international travel, I am filled with excitement for my 30s to be dotted with tales from far-off places. For once in what feels like ages, every morning when I open my eyes and take each step forward, it is infused with optimism and anticipation. And that's true progress if there ever was. Wednesday, October 27th. Today marks 1 year since I initiated my journey on Reddit, and as such, it is only fitting that I give one final update before bidding adieu. After months of waiting, I am finally divorced, which feels like a heavy burden being lifted off my chest. This marks the end of nearly 1/3 of my life with this person. Coincidentally, while visiting an old friend in town 1 month ago, I saw her again for the first time since last December when she opened the door to leave right as I was entering. Both wearing masks, but eye contact was made and I confirmed that it was truly her. She said something I couldn't understand, and then we just stood there in silence for a few moments. Then I went inside the store. As soon as I started walking around, an intense wave of sadness washed over me, and it took all my strength to remain composed. It goes to show how one look can bring you right back to where you began emotionally. Have I been missing her? Absolutely not. Instead, what I miss is the individual that I believe she used to be. However, it's entirely possible that person never existed in reality. Regardless of this fact though, my feelings don't contain any animosity or ill will towards her. After all, how can one benefit from dwelling on hatred when they're only burdening themselves as a result? Also, I recently learned through a mutual friend that she was seen with someone else outside a pub several years prior had further solidified my decision to move these emotions and keep going forward without resentment in my heart. She did not express her suspicions to me or my friend because she was uncertain if it was truly the case and she didn't want to meddle. Her silence had left me fuming, as I could have utilized that information years ago. Although the facts weren't deliberate, I could have verified whether she was out on that particular night and spared myself a great deal of distress in the long run. Now I understand why there's always been tension between us. In October, our goal was to explore New York City in the autumn and take advantage of a lifting travel ban between the US and UK for fully vaccinated travelers. However, that date has been delayed until November 8th, leaving us at a crossroads with our plan. My friend is unable to get off work until after 2021, meaning I'll have to go without them. What an immense disappointment since we are both looking forward to this adventure together. I'm determined to move forward with him in this new year, although I must take extra time to reflect on my decision first. The pandemic has certainly thrown us surprise after surprise, so it's no wonder if any of us feel overwhelmed. Nonetheless, I know that perseverance will get me there. This is only a starting point for what lies ahead. Despite my dad's attempt to restore our relationship, I'm having a hard time feeling anything but apathy for my parents. It might sound cruel, but it is what it is. No matter how much effort I put forth, that won't change. As stated in an earlier post of mine, though I remained unbothered by rebuilding the connection between us, I would still like them to transfer ownership of the house into my name, a request which has yet to be addressed. At this moment, I was frustrated and just wanted to assert my authority in our conversations. To be honest, I couldn't care less about that house. It wouldn't change a thing anyway. Even if Nightmare on Elm Street iconic residence appeared there instead, nothing can alter what had happened or reverse time, unless some time-traveling shenanigans have occurred since. This is unfortunately an unavoidable consequence of their actions. If you're considering forgiving a cheater, my strong advice is to not. Don't be that person desperately trying to snuff out the fire started by their deceitful partner, only for them to start up again. After all, I've been through in this past year, and after reading countless infidelity support forums, I can confidently confirm that it would be better if you cut your losses before they become even more painful than they already are. At the commencement of this year, I encountered a frightful experience at work. When brushing past a metal bin, my trouser leg was cut. Its severity didn't come to light until much later in the day when I went home and went to bed that night. Then around 2 a.m., something extraordinary happened. My leg began pulsating while also feeling deathly ill with double vision, dizziness, and alternating between fevers and chills. Instantly, I suspected it might be sepsis, so I called an ambulance. Unfortunately, the wait time was a lengthy 2 hours due to Friday night peak hour traffic during COVID-19. My imagination ran wild with fear while my heart raced like crazy. Yet oddly enough, the only thing that could relax me in this moment of hysteria was when I accepted death as a possibility. Once resigned to that reality, miraculously my terror dissipated. Recently, I have been pondering if my accepting that certain things might truly be at an end was the impetus of embracing fate. As a result of this realization, everything began to feel much more tranquil and straightforward. Similarly, with infidelity or duplicity, you come to terms with the fact that what once existed is no longer there due to someone else's willingness to drive to seek satisfaction in spiteful ways. Enduring an unstoppable war can be admirable, yet when the odds of success are as slim as those associated with winning a lottery, is it truly worth the pain? I don't think so. Everyone has their own circumstances that involve children and other family members. However, some struggles may ultimately prove to be fruitless efforts. Accepting that something cannot work out can make all facets of life much clearer. It's funny. I haven't expressed my emotions in writing since high school. Working on roofs for a living has kept me busy, but this experience revitalized that lost side of myself. If anything good can be taken away from this ordeal, I will no longer keep my feelings bottled up and repressed. Expressing my thoughts and feelings on paper has been incredibly cleansing, allowing me to see the bigger picture of my circumstances. I am convinced that journaling or jotting down notes will continue to be beneficial for me, regardless if it's just a dialogue between myself and the pages of a notebook. Reflecting on my experience, I can truly say that some situations in life are so precarious and uncertain, you may never know how they could have turned out. If it weren't for me seeking assistance here or encountering the dog walkers by chance, things likely would have been much different today. Without a doubt, had those events not transpired as they did, I'd potentially find myself intoxicated beyond belief to the brink of death in a ditch somewhere, otherwise possibly locked away due to retaliating against jacket holder with extreme measures after tearing through his house like an uncontrollable storm. Despite being in a terrible state, I am thankful that things didn't take a turn for the worse. Being drunk and angry presents an incredibly dangerous situation, one which could have resulted in injury or even death. Fortunately, I made it through unscathed to see another day, grateful for my safety and well-being. Most of the posts I've written before have been about the facts and occurrences, yet my recent ones are more centered around how I personally feel about what has happened. Betrayal is an emotion that can evoke such strong reactions. Nothing else on this earth compares to it. People you thought you could trust end up hurting you. It's a horrible feeling, but at least we can all relate in one way or another. Here are cheers for being able to speak up and express myself. When I wrote my first post, I felt like a changed person, one that was worse than before. However, after going through everything and emerging out the other side with resilience, strength, and courage, I now feel stronger than ever.
I hope you enjoyed our video. It's always a pleasure creating these stories, and if you liked what you saw, please take the time to show your support by giving it a thumbs up and subscribing if you haven't already done so. Sharing with your friends is also greatly appreciated. Let me know in the comments section below what you think of our videos. I'm all ears. Be sure to check back soon for more original Reddit stories every day on Reddit Rev. Until then, stay awesome, my friend.